Are you ready for? So I have a list of.
I see that on your phone. You have like a dozen building listed, but do you understand we're talking about 3 only, right?
I know, but
you
I don't know.
You can't pick the same one as the ones I picked.
No, I wouldn't do that.
I don't know if you wouldn't
Those
do that.
are not my favorite buildings.
Oh.
For sure. What were yours again? The Pompidou.
It's too bad you have to tune in
the Farnsworth and Johnson Wax.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are good ones, but not my favorites for sure. No. I really did mean what I said when I didn't know what the 3 were going to be. Because, okay, look, I haven't been to see all the buildings I would like to see. So I think my list is very much biased toward the things I've seen. And but I just, a lot of the buildings on my list are in France. Because we frequent the country of France more often than anywhere else.
Wonder why.
And I don't know why. And so I feel kind of bad because as I was going through...
Was it mostly Corbusier buildings?
As I was going through this list and, looking through my iPhone photos, which is basically the only way I can keep track of what's happened in my life. My life is only understood through the lens of iPhone photographs. It's basically, okay, when did we go to do traveling to different places? And it's mostly France. One of my 3 I'll designate to the Ronchamp Chapel by Corbusier, because I've said many times before, I think on the show, that if someone asks me, that's usually my first answer. And I was tempted to stray away from that because of that, but it's the truth. That's definitely one of my favorite buildings.
So you're starting with the most expected one. I see.
Yeah.
I see how you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us why it is your favorite building? Like what makes it stand out from others that you've seen and experienced?
It's a funny thing for being an architect who dissects and critiques buildings every day with our own work and then students' work and then other buildings that we see. No.
You don't know why?
Well, I'll say this. So
Well, when was
I've been
to. I was going to say, when was the first time you visited the Chapelle de Ronchamp?
Yeah, what is it?
Chapelle de Ronchamp in French. Chapel.
I've been there twice now. The first time was when I was a student in architecture school, and I think I was a fourth. I took a gap year, so I might have been technically a 5th-year student, somewhere around there. And it was a small group of us. I think 2 or 3 French guys and myself. Is that right? And maybe a few other friends, I can't recall. And we did a road trip. There was 5 of us. We did a road trip throughout France for a couple of days or a week or whatever. And this was on the list. And the thing is, for people who don't know, this chapel is not close to anything or anywhere. It's significant. It's in a small town, right? And it's, 5.5-hour drive from Paris?
Yeah, it's in the countryside.
The thing also, it is a white chapel on a hillside. And so it's a journey to get to this place. And so I've always wondered if my affinity toward this building, how much of it is because of the journey itself and the lead up, the anticipation, right? The dedication to driving 5.5 miles in a small, tiny French car, eating snack food, and then trying to find this chapel in the small town. You have to kind of find it, right? You have to search for it. And then you see it from a distance as you drive and approach this town, or you're in the town, you see on this hillside this tiny white speck, that's the chapel. And it's kind of like the clouds part, and it's there. We see it, the thing that we all have known about and seen in pictures for so long. And it's Corbusier is one of his most iconic buildings. And then you finally see it on a hillside as a speck. And then you have to find out how to get to the hillside, and get up there rather. And so that was the first time I saw it. And I think we were on site for maybe a couple hours. And as I've said before, it was probably the first time where after I saw the building and we were leaving the site, and again, after being there for a couple of hours, it was very clear that one would need to be on the site, around the building, and in the building for at least a full day from sunrise to sunset to fully understand and digest everything that's going on with it. Even though it's a very, very small structure, and it is just a white with a concrete roof, but a white structure on a flat plot of land that's on a hillside, but it's a flat plot of land. Even with all that, right? There's not a lot of hardcore site engagement. It's not like the building is cantilevering over a hillside. It's not like there are trees going through the roof. It's not like it's built over a boulder or it's partially underground. It's just a building sitting on a flat pad of grass. And yet, that was the feeling I had when I first saw it, was I need to be here for much longer.
But so you went there twice. Did you feel the same emotion the 2 times you went there? Or was the second time less magical than the first time?
The second time was just as good. It was just as good. And the third time will probably be just as good too. I always felt like when you go to see buildings, the first time you see it, it's more like a first date. I sound like a weirdo, but it's
what you're saying here.
It's a first date, and so it's kind of it does feel that way to me. So it's kind of like an awkward interaction. You're trying to understand and get to know each other, and as a viewer, there's so much information to take in, and there's also the lead up to the building, whether it be the journey I've described for Ronchamp, or it's just something more standard, like you're driving 15 minutes, down the city blocks to find an Ome building. It doesn't matter. There is all of the story leading up to seeing the thing, which does impact how you feel about it, and the seasons and the day of the week and all those things that kind of shape it. And so I think that the first time you see a building it's kind of like, to really be able to talk about a building and understand it, you need to see it probably 2 or 3 times, I feel. So the first time was probably overwhelming. When you meet someone for the first time, it's like exciting and kind of awkward, and there's it's kind of hard sometimes to fully understand all the things that are taking place. And I feel like that was the case with the chapel, and that's also why probably I wanted to be there for much longer. And so the second time was kind of like peeling the onion and then starting to just be there with the structure and understand it, and not have the story of going to see the building kind of shape my views of it. So I think there's like a calmer sense when you're at a structure the second time. You can just kind of exist
a bit less
there.
Of that appreciation.
So so different, very, very different the second time.
I mean, it is a pretty funky building. I have to say, it's very interesting. I wouldn't put it as my
Get
favorite.
Out of here! How dare you? Even though I already know that's the case.
So
because you've chosen 3.
No, I mean, if I had to pick my favorite building from Corbu, I don't know that would be the one.
Did you choose any buildings from Corbu?
No, I was trying to get away from. I always refer Corbu to things when I think about stuff, so I'm just trying to run away from him again. But actually, when I look at the pictures on the screen of like the facade and kind of like the underside of the roof that looks like the underside of a boat, and so that it actually reminds me one of my art project in architecture school in my first year. We had this clay modeling studio class that we had to do, and we had basically a block of clay, a block of dirt, and we were supposed to like make shapes, like abstract landscape out of it, like make it in 3D with the dirt and with the clay, and then draw it.
Oh, cool.
Which was kind of cool. But mine, look, I don't know, first year, you don't really know what you're doing. You're trying to understand what does the teacher want, and how do I make something look good, and you're playing with your hands and with that thing, and there's no plan. You're just kind of like going for it. It looks really awkward.
Take a step back. You had to model something out of clay and then draw it?
Yeah. So you would like make shapes and the kind
was
of
there
like
any
landscape.
was it meant to be something?
No,
like a building?
It was just meant to be
just a shape.
Just a shape, just to kind of like play with shape, understand it, and
cool.
then you would position it and like draw it. Find the best angle to draw it. Look at the light, the shadows, and learn how to represent that and understand that. So I mean, it was a pretty good exercise, but my thing looked kind of weird. I should find pictures and show you. It's not my favorite thing. I was like, I did the exercise. I'm not happy with it. And whenever I see the Chapelle de Ronchamp, I always remind myself of this clay thing I did, which I didn't really like.
Yeah.
So I get kind of mixed feeling about the building because it reminds me of that so much. It's a pretty funky building, it's not really a building. It's more like a sculpture than a building. But it's not a sexy sculpture. You know, like there's some the sculptures by Moore, for example, are very voluptuous curves and very like sensual and like very sexy, and this is more like a kind of an awkward sculpture of a building, which goes back to like the notion of beauty and what does it mean? Does something need to be beautiful to be interesting or to provoke emotion on people? Probably not. What are you doing?
I'm trying to pull up the floor plan.
I was going to ask if you, because you've been there twice, if you would be able to draw some kind of floor plan of the space.
No, I couldn't.
It's a pretty funky floor plan.
I wonder if this was the actual plan, because it looks like it was hand-drawn. Yeah. Might have been. I mean, the thing that I wasn't thinking about was the floor, I guess, tile pattern, which is also very, very bizarre. Now that I see it. But this doesn't have the pew. Oh, it does have the pews. No, are the pews only here? And then this is all just circulation? They're only on one side,
yeah. When we entered the store, we sat here, we lit a candle there, and that was that.
So this is all circulation?
It's all open space, yeah.
Huh. So I always wish when I go to visit buildings that I would have a floor plan of the building in hand and a section potentially, and a drawing set, but not like CDs, just like floor plan, elevation, and section, and then roof plan, because I think it would really help. I might start doing that when we plan trips, so because I think it can really help me understand, connect the dots between how a space feels and then what it looks like in plan. And to be honest, now that I say that, I don't think that's a very common thing to do. Like whenever we would visit buildings as students, and presumably that's the time when you're meant to be learning the most in a certain way, we never had with us during the site visits plans of the buildings, but really you absolutely should. Because especially as a student, you don't understand necessarily when you draw something how it feels in space. Once you get to more experience, you do. But I think, like, again, connecting those neurons, right, is critical. And we never did that. It seems odd. I mean, for giant buildings, maybe it's more difficult of a problem to solve. But certainly when you go to see, in Los Angeles, like the case study houses or smaller structures, like chapels and whatnot, like you should really have a floor plan.
I mean, sometimes they do. We went to see this house by Franklin right here in LA. That they give you like a little brochure to tour the house, so it's like
that's right, the Hollyhock
house. It's kind of like a self-guided tour. You have the little pamphlet with you, and you can look at it. And there is a floor plan in that.
Yeah,
that was actually pretty handy. I would agree with you, because you look at the floor plan and it looked like this massive house on a drawing, and when you're in the space, it didn't feel like that at all. So that would definitely be something to do, I think.
I think it's just yeah, but no, I couldn't draw it because when I was there, I wasn't thinking about what it would look like in plan. Had I thought about that, I could probably figure it out. But it also is a type of structure that it doesn't really ask to be thought about in that way. Like, it doesn't care about that. I'm not saying that Corbusier didn't pay attention to the floor plan, or the floor plan was not important in generating this work of architecture, but the experience of the building is not about that. As opposed to a lot of modern architecture, which is about the rigidity and the rigor through which one designs a floor plan and the entire building by following a structural grid of some kind, or an implied grid, or things being aligned to here, and everything has to be aligned, right? I've talked about it before. Like, I think that's one of the downsides of a lot of modern architects is they almost become too confined to everything must have a geometric alignment purpose. It's aligned or misaligned for very specific reasons. It's orthogonal and and everything's like very calculated. Right, the plan feels very calculated. The building might feel great and have a great experience, but it's also very calculated. It's the result of being calculated. And this building is not that. I think like what you said, it feels more like a sculpture. It physically and formally looks more like a sculpture, what one would imagine a sculpture being. And so when you're there, for me at least, I just enjoyed the raw like visual experience of the building, the place, and all of the moments and rooms and things. And I wasn't thinking about like, how does this align to there, and whatever else.
I think that also goes back to program. Like this is a chapel.
Yeah, fair.
It's a spiritual place. It's a place where I was gonna say telling stories, but like you are telling stories. You're reading a book, right? And you're meditating, you're thinking. So it kind of makes sense that the building would reflect that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, like on this podcast, we often ask architects what is one building type that they have not designed and would like to. And we've got a bunch of different answers, but a spiritual place is what a lot of architects say is a common answer. And it's because it's I think for the non-architects, the spiritual aspect of architecture and the emotions it helps people feel it's probably the first few baby steps architects take when they're learning architecture in school. That's what you start with, right? And in those first few exercises, you do design things like chapels or just spaces, right? They're like, it's a space for thinking, a space for bathing, a space for, and we'll always call it a space, which is to suggest that it's divorced from any preconception about what a building of that type is. It's just a space for this. And it's all about light and form and play of those two things and mass and movement, and that's all it is. That's those only things you're considering. You're not really thinking about structure in a really realistic sense. You're not thinking about sustainability. You're not thinking about, program, really. You're not thinking about budget, constructability. All that stuff you're not thinking about. It's just the fundamentals. And the funny thing is, as you go on as an architect, it becomes, with the way the world is, it becomes harder and harder and harder to produce work that is expressive of those initial first baby steps and projects that we all did. And that's really the struggle. One of the biggest struggles in the career of an architect is to do work like that. And I think that's also why architects we've interviewed who are 60, 70 years old, whatever, had long careers, done all different types of stuff, successful by almost any measure, they are drawn to that. Because there's freedom in doing in a building like that, and it's like the purest form in some ways of the experience of architecture, which is just really hard to do when you're doing a hospital or a library or even a house. Things that have more flexible program. There's a lot of other constraints that I mentioned, right? Sustainability, constructability, budget, and all that, schedule, and all those things can feel like they're a weights on the shoulder. So yeah, a chapel would be fun to design. I think, but it's not like the chapel doesn't have program either. There's 4 or 5 different pockets of space. There's an outdoor, I don't even know what it's called in the proper Christian terms, the outdoor gathering area where the priest kind of comes out and then says his sermons and whatnot. It's like a little amphitheater sort of setting.
Yeah, but I don't think that's typical of churches. I mean, usually churches happen inside. True. I think that's kind of a Corbusier thing on Corbusier take on the church. Okay, I mean that's a good one. I mean, you've seen other buildings from Corbusier, but that's still the one that stood out the most.
I like a lot of his work. I mean, on my list was the Unité. On my list was the Fermini Chapel.
The Unité was also on my list.
Yeah, on my list was the pavilion we saw in Switzerland.
That's also one of my favorite. I felt like it was kind of like a Rubik's Cube, but like you can go in or something. Like it just felt like a giant, like an adult playhouse. Yeah. Yeah.
Even to be honest, the project Villa Savoie is a great building. The Villa Savoie, I think, is I don't think many architects would put that on their top, 5 or 10 buildings, and I think it's partly because it's been over dissected and like there's fatigue.
Everybody learned about it in school.
Yeah.
I also feel like the Unité or even the pavilion we saw in Switzerland had a lot of details. What I like about his work is that it touches on all the scale of the building.
That's a good observation.
It's like from the context, where is the building and what's around it.
Sure.
To like thinking about it in terms of like more theoretically, like
theoretically.
Like the Unité, for example, is like thinking about an urban ecosystem within a building, and like developing internal streets and this and that, and down to like, the cabinet detail, the handles, the hinges,
the glass partitions between spaces. Yeah, which that reminds me, is anyone who likes to read and likes architecture, you should read the book High Rise by, is it J.G. Ballard? Gallard? I'm getting confused between people, I think. There's also a movie that was done.
The movie is weird.
Called High Rise, featuring Tom, the guy who plays Loki, Hiddleston.
Oh yeah.
That was released, I don't know, 2017 or something. Anyway, the book is a joyful read. It goes by quickly, and it takes place in a structure that I don't know if it actually was based off of the Unité, but it's basically the Unité. When they describe it in the book, it's a Unité.
Oh, and the building seems like it's much higher though.
Possibly. Well, based off of. But I mean, it has all the same elements when they talk about it in the book.
Who told me? Was it you who told me that in whatever building there is a trash chute? And every time, like in a really tall tower, I think it's a friend, and every time you throw your trash in the trash chute, it sounds like a bomb is coming off because of the height. Oh no, that's a real building. I think. Yeah. Did you tell me that?
No,
or did someone else
it was
tell
a
me
friend, and it was, I won't name things, but it was designed by a famous architect, a modern building, a contemporary building, like done in the last 10 years or so, that was built, and then they didn't handle the trash chutes correctly. Which, I also want to say with that, that for most people, and rightfully so, they'd be like, what a stupid architect. How can you do this whole building and not think about that? At the same time, I will say, of all the many things an architect has to think about, I don't make excuses, but like shit like that falls through the cracks sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, it's just...
Oh, yeah. I mean, there is a lot of things to think about.
There's a lot of things to know. But that's also where you should be working with an architect of record who would catch those things and has, like, a lot of experience with that building type and would know, not to do whatever. But anyway, so High Rise, I would definitely read. But Corbusier's work, so this is still a favorite of mine. Even though I listed all the other ones on my list. I think it's just... I don't know. I feel like there's 4 sides to the building, roughly speaking. And I feel like at each 4 sides of the building and at the 4 corners on the interior, like every kind of, elevation you would draw if you were doing a CD set, there's it's a thing to study. And that's what I think makes it so interesting, is that every side is fascinating. That's also why it's probably not everyone's cup of tea, because there's a lot going on. But it also has very clear, a larger formal partie to it, and its shape, and it has, I don't know, it just has a lot of stuff happening, and I think the way that the elements interact with each other are successful and near perfection, and they're also not things that are the result of a person who's going to sit down and again draw a bunch of grids and calculate this and that angle aligns to here, and we got to align to the view and align to the tree and align to the hillside, and then that line goes here. Like, you could never ever design a building if that's your approach to architecture. And I think that's what I like about it too, is that this is the epitome of an example of a highly rationalized work of architecture that makes sense. And the relationships again between its own components make sense, but it's not the result of someone nerding out by drawing a bunch of lines, straight lines and plan. Like this is weird, and then he has this big column that comes down and sits inside of I don't even know what that is, like a big half cup kind of thing. It's weird. It's very, very, very strange. It's very strange, but I think that's why I like it.
Okay. Well, I give it to you. I mean, it's a pretty unique.
It also has, I think, a lot of the elements that it has a really strong clarity of the relationship of the pieces, and that tends to be something that I am more drawn toward, rather than architecture that kind of blobs over stuff. Like there's this, for a period of time, blobitecture. And there's, I think also when computers started being heavily used in architectural design, everyone was using NURBs and ZURBs and curves and blurbs to like murph everything together. And it was all splines and blinds and whatever. And it's like, that has some value for sure. But for me personally, I'm like, okay, well, I don't know. I kind of like the celebration of the friction and contrast and harmony between elements, rather than it being all that's my architecture. And I've never vibed with that. I don't see a whole lot of intrigue or interest in it. I think it's more interesting to have space between things, to have distinction between things. And Corbusier does a really, really good job, as does other architects, of that. And there's tension between the components. There's composition in the facades. There's what would appear to be randomness. There's texture. There's floatingness. There's solidness. There's gaps. There's about like everything that would be interesting to me in probably a work of architecture is in this building. So now, talking about it out loud, that's probably, I suppose, why that's the case. Why I've chosen this one.
Well, it's interesting because I feel like it's one of the few buildings that feels like it was shaped by somebody's hand in the way it was designed, rather than by their tools.
Right. Right. There's a primitive component to it too.
There's a very primitive component. There is kind of like imperfection and awkwardness. Like the curves are not perfect curves. They're just kind of like organically made. They're not necessarily precise or over-calculated. It's a weird collage of things, which it just feels more like an experiment, like a modeling experiment, rather than like a calculated piece.
It also feels, that's a good point, that it feels like it was made by hand.
It really reminds me of that clay thing I've made. It just reminds me of like somebody taking a block of dirt and like, shaping it with their hands. That's what this building reminds me of. I
think also, to be honest, maybe this is a stretch, but I think now we are so... sometimes it feels like we are controlled or directed or restrained or whatever by the tools we have, computers, keyboards and mice and VR even, and like all this stuff, all these peripheral things that they get in the way. And they're great tools, and they make construction documents a lot easier. They make producing renderings a lot easier, and all that stuff, but they sometimes I feel like they're just like, it's a bunch of string around my hands. I'm like, just get away. And that's where I know we still draw by hand and sketch by hand and sometimes do tiny cardboard model things. But that's why I also like this. It just feels like someone sat down, which Corbusier did, and drew it without a computer, which he did, and they dreamt up of some ideas. And they were not restrained to any kind of typical modern formal rigidity, and then they produced this, and that's what it is. And then they did the sculpture, and then they stopped, and there it is, it's done. Yeah. And I think that aspect to the design process is becoming more and more a difficult wavelength to tap into because of all the peripherals and the things we have to deal with and the tech and then the email and then whatever.
All right, so that was building number 1. We have 2 more to go through. So what's the second one?
What is the second one? Okay, sticking with France, but doing a pretty significant pivot. Again, biased toward France because I've been there a lot, not because other places don't have great architecture. I'm sure if I traveled to other countries more often, I would probably pick other buildings. Gonna go the different route. I'm gonna say the Eiffel Tower.
I was gonna say, are you gonna say the Eiffel Tower?
I'm gonna say the Eiffel Tower. Yeah, that's very rude to laugh at me because
this is a bit. It's probably a lot of people's favorite building. You know what I mean? It's very unique.
I'm siding with the people.
Okay.
I don't think many architects would list Eiffel Tower as one of their favorite buildings. I think this is a casual list, to be fair, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, is it even a building that one could ask?
Oh, bon question, Marina. Tell us, pray tell, what is a building?
Well, your favorite building is a monument, which I guess a building could be a monument, but is this a building if it's not enclosed? And I don't know what else would define a building.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a floor that's enclosed that has a restaurant, so I guess it counts as a building.
Yeah, it is. It is a good question. Like, is it a
structure?
Building?
Is it a building? Are they both the same thing? I mean, who knows, right?
I mean, again, to like the layman or the non-architect, it tends to be when a structure becomes well, I don't know, because the Arc de Triomphe you can also occupy. But most people wouldn't think of that as a building. They think of that as, they would label it as a monument. The Eiffel Tower would be labeled probably as both. If you ask like 100 people, they'd probably 50-50 say is, one or the other, I feel.
I would say people would say it's a monument, not a building. Yeah.
Well, that's still is my second choice.
Okay, what is it about it that you like? Is it all the little screws and things?
Yeah. It has actually less to do with the structure itself or like the decorative aspects of the aesthetics of the structure, right? The little decorative pieces at the arches at the bottom and whatever else. It probably has more to do with the impact it has when you're experiencing the city of Paris, and it's this kind of ever-present element. I think
you're a very sentimental person with these two buildings.
Huh?
You're a very sentimental person with these two buildings.
I'm part French, that's why.
You're not.
I'm trying to recall. The first time I saw this building, it was also on the same trip when I saw Ronchamp. And maybe it has to do with the trip. Maybe that was the thing that left a mark on me more than anything else. But there was an article written about, I think it was about structuralism, but it was about the Eiffel Tower by Roland Barthes. Barthes. I can never pronounce the last name, so I stopped trying.
Roland Barthes.
Yeah. So, and I can't remember if I read the article before I saw the tower or after. I think it was after. It was after. And the article and I have to find it somewhere. It captured the subconscious, thoughts that I had and feelings about the Eiffel Tower and why I felt it was so interesting. But he wrote it. Like, I didn't have to. The things I was trying to figure out, like why is it there? I know I have this itch or this feeling. What is that? Would have never found the words to describe it. And then he wrote it. And once I put those two together, now I'm also finding this is similar to having a kind of a plan and a building. But pairing these two different mediums together, I was like, that's it. And I'm going to do a really, really poor, kind of key point takeaway of that, because I read the article like 20 years ago. Not 20, yeah, I don't know, 15 years ago, whatever it was. It talks about the fact that it is ever present as a monument in the city, so it becomes a landmark from which you use to kind of understand where you are in proximity to it and in proximity to other things, which I always find super interesting, because my other half, my heart beyond architecture, goes toward urban design and urbanism. It's also he also talks about the fact that it's an open structure, literally an open structure. and you can see through it. And he, I think, puts forward the idea that because it's an open structure, it allows people to have a stronger affinity toward it because they can visualize themselves in it. I think he meant not just physically, but also kind of emotionally or phenomenologically. And there's something about the openness that begs it to be engaged with in that level. And that's why, if I remember correctly again, he believes that's partially why it's a structure that people love. It's not just because it's the only one, in Paris, aside from that horrible high rise that faces it's the only other the tall one. It's like kind of dark gray. If you're in the Eiffel Tower, you look down toward one of the big, streets or avenues or whatever, and you see that big building.
A black one?
The big rectangular black one that they were going to reskin.
Montparnasse?
Huh?
Montparnasse?
No.
La Défense?
It's a modern building.
I don't know what building you're talking about.
Yeah. I bet if I look through my pictures that I took from the top, there it is. That's
Montparnasse. Tour Montparnasse.
The tower?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's disgusting. I don't know who allowed that. This big black rectangle that has nothing to do with anything.
Well, it's not loved by many people in Paris.
Yeah. So I don't know why I brought that up, but so I guess So my point was that it's not loved just because it's one of the only buildings, right? And it's tall, because there is a building that's tall and there's nothing else around it. No one likes that building. And if you do, then your opinion doesn't matter about life in general. You've got it all wrong. I'm sorry if you like that building. Take a look at yourself. So it has to do with its shape, of course, the fact that it plants and has a connection to the ground and then points upward to the sky and all that kind of stuff. But it's its openness that causes people to be kind of enamored with it. In according to his article, if I remember correctly.
No, that's very interesting.
And it also points out that it's the only place in Paris you can be without looking at the tower is in the tower.
Of course.
Smarty pants. Of course.
Well, of course.
We all know these things.
It's like if you're inside your own body, you can look at yourself.
I think that's he might have actually drawn that analogy as well. Maybe not. But I think that's a very interesting observation.
Like the camera cannot look at the camera.
Yeah, we as an audience understand that you understand these things. If you've known these things for much longer than we have innately, we get it. Your intelligence is noted.
I know.
If you have another more evidence, though, feel free to give it.
The plant cannot look at the plant.
Okay, that's why you put googly eyes on it. So anyway, I think all of that just makes it a very, very unique kind of phenomenon. Paired with the fact that again, Paris is mostly flat and there's nothing else tall around it. It's just, I don't know. I do like the Eiffel Tower. It wouldn't be one of my favorite buildings. I know, we know that too.
But I do find its shape, and maybe it's because it's maybe it's the symbol. I found it comforting.
Comforting. That's another good word.
For some reason,
yeah. Despite the fact,
it's not like you feel safe, but you kind of feel like, I don't know, like reassured or something, which is a strange thing because I'm not even from Paris. Like I don't, and the Eiffel Tower is a place of tourists, so it's kind of a weird thing that it feels that way. But it's kind of like I don't know if it's because the symbol kind of like reminds you of the place, and therefore that's enough to feel comforting. It somewhat, in a way, embodies what Paris is without really showing it.
As a symbol.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, that's the other thing too that starts to really distort reality when we talk about famous buildings. When they take on a certain meaning in architecture or in broader society like the Eiffel Tower does, it's almost like being able to critique and understand the building for what it physically is, in its most truthful lens, is almost impossible to do because of the symbolic nature of it and the meaning that has been projected, that we have projected onto the building. And I do think it's a two-way relationship. So there are and I'm sure Mr. Bart would agree, Mr. Bart, I don't know how to say his last name, would agree that it's a two-way street. So like, Bart, that the tower itself is asking for some of that kind of relationship in the way it is physically. But when we project so much meaning onto a structure, it becomes really difficult to like understand it objectively. And maybe we don't have to, at that point. Maybe that's also why it's intriguing, because it's one of the structures that's now, it's crossed over into different territory. It's not just a building that is nice, that has all the right pieces and does, has all the right program and all the right this and that. It's like completely, I don't know. It's significant and it does all these things, but despite it hardly having any program at all.
But it's interesting because actually you pick this building too, which is David, which again, it's not a building, it's a sculpture. You again pick a sculpture.
What?
Like the buildings you're picking are not standard buildings. They're like monuments and sculpture. What the hell, man? That's cheating.
No, it's not. The Corbusier Chapel is a chapel. You go there to pray.
It's a sculpture. It's not really a
Well, then tell us the difference between a sculpture and a building.
But what's interesting with the Eiffel Tower actually is that, first of all, happy accident that it ended up staying when it should have been taken away and became this huge thing, right? Which the story itself is really fascinating. But also, if you look at just the shape of it and the design, how the heck did Mr. Eiffel come up with that idea?
Gustav.
What's up, Gustav? Like how, who would have thought making little arches and having a little bridge at the middle and another I don't know, like. So look at the details. It's nuts. Like that. That doesn't make any sense. Why would you put so much detail into it? Something that's supposed to be temporary. like another one of those guys who like shoot for the moon when he was just supposed to lift himself up 3 feet up in the air. Like, what the hell?
Shame on you, Eiffel. You put too much work into your tower. I think I remember reading a factoid, like the number of rivets in the Eiffel Tower is something. I don't forget what it is. It's an extremely high number. It's a weird one because it is mostly pure structure. Mostly, not entirely.
They added
but
a
mostly.
Restaurant and everything, but I don't think it provides anything. I don't even think it's an antenna for Paris of sorts. So
I don't think so. No, it's just but no. What I meant by structure, I meant like structural components, like structural members, bracing and beams, and there's not really members is what we would call them. And there are decorative elements. You don't need to have the little, like the arches at the bottom of the Eiffel Tower, if I'm not mistaken, are completely decorative. They serve no structural purpose at all. And there's a bunch of other little things here and there that are decorative, but. I don't know, it's a weird one too, because it looks very different depending on how close you are to it and the light. Also, from a distance, it has elegance. From up close, when you're going through the elevators, it is like you're going through scaffolding. You know what I mean? And when you get up close, you realize that it's brown, which I've seen it enough times now and thought about enough times where I know that it's brown. But I think prior to seeing it, it's usually painted. I feel like it's always represented like
silver.
I was going to say, I feel like it's a reddish color, or maybe
you're thinking about the Golden Gate Bridge, maybe.
So, but I remember when I first saw the Eiffel Tower, I was like, I did not expect it to be like basic mud brown, which is kind of the color that it is. So it's it's a very, very intriguing structure. And it's weird. It's like having. For me, going throughout Paris, you're on the metro and you're going mostly underground, sometimes above ground. And then you're, flying through the city. There's trees going by, there's buildings going by. And then further in the distance, you see buildings go by at a slower pace. And then every now and then between the gaps, of the buildings, you see the Eiffel Tower go by. And it's kind of like having a big friendly friend that's like there. And when you turn the corner, like there it is. It's like, oh, there's Eiffel Tower. It's kind of nice.
What's interesting
At a cafe,
is that
it's like, where's the tower? It's not there. Then you go to another cafe. Oh, there's a tower. Cool. Let's sit here and like look at the tower.
Well, what's interesting too is that you can actually use that as a guide, so you know where you are in the city, but just you know, seeing where it's at compared to where you're at. Okay, well, that was very unexpected.
It's weird, right? Like if you're in Paris, and this is like maybe the more touristy side of things, but there's like photographs and things people do because other people have done them, which is shallow. But there's also, I think people do them because there is something there about it feeling good. And when you are in Paris and you're at a cafe or a restaurant or wherever and you're parked outside, would you prefer to have, generally speaking, a view of the Eiffel Tower or a view without the Eiffel Tower and just see sky? I think most people would be like, yeah, I'd like to see the tower. Like, why not? Especially if you're not from Paris. And I feel like even if I lived in Paris, I'd be like that. Yeah, sure. It's this.
Well, I mean, it's always, I lived in Paris for 4 years. If you can spy the Eiffel Tower, it's kind of like, oh, I can see the top of it. Oh, I can see a leg. Oh, yeah. It's kind of like, I don't know, you're playing hide and seek with a tire in the middle of a city. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's it also, the distance from oneself into the tower distorts our sense of distance.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you see it, you feel close. I don't mean close to it, yes, but you feel close to Paris. I don't know. You feel close, right? There's a familiarity kind of that's like I said. There's a friend that's nearby. So yeah, I was hesitant to name this as my second one, but
we'll take it. It's not really a building, but we'll take it.
Tell us the definition between a building, a sculpture, and a building and a monument.
No, I won't. That's not the point of this recording.
Yeah, that'll be the next recording, which you will read, because listeners they want to know what's your definition.
I think there's a lot of ways it could be defined. So
like
what I'm wondering.
That's not an answer. Yeah, what's the difference in your mind between?
I don't know. I mean, a monument is something that is symbolic. It's a symbol of something to more than one person. Right, and oftentimes in an urban setting. Okay, that would be my definition of a monument. It represents something, that resonates with a lot of people.
Oh, okay.
So it could be a historical monument. It marks something that happened in history. It could be a religious monument that means something to a specific group of people. It could be, it was part of an event and it's dead and it became this giant thing. That's a monument too. A building, I would say that a building is a structure that is serving a purpose. That would also be the definition of a monument. The purpose of a monument is to be a symbol. The purpose of a building is to be used for something.
But if the building is, playing devil's advocate here, if the building does perform, but it doesn't perform in maybe the most traditional sense of, there's a cafe, the building is a cafe, it is a restaurant, or the building is a school, or it's a library or a house. But it does serve the purpose of the things that we've described that the Eiffel Tower does, which is purposeful. I mean, those the things we've talked about. Its relationship to the city has meaning and purpose. Maybe.
I mean, it's interesting because the word a building is the same word as building something. So one could say that any structure being erected is therefore a building because you built it. Right?
Yeah, maybe.
Actually, it's the same in French, bâtir and bâtiment. It's the same root, right? So one could say that an open, a cube made of concrete with a punched opening that has nothing in it is a building because you built it.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fine line.
So here.
It's a squiggly line.
And a building could be a monument too. The one doesn't say that the other one, mean that they're not compatible. So here you go. Now, I'm trying to guess, based on these first two, what would be your third favorite building?
Yeah.
Now, I would ask for a clue. Is it in Europe?
Well, I'll answer the clue once I've decided what my third one is. I'm reviewing my list. Oh, gosh. I don't know if I have a third.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
I have two. That are they're splitting. They're neither or are really my third, but they're close enough so that they'll share the podium together in third spot.
Okay. Is one of them in Europe?
No.
Oh, so are they both in the United States?
No.
What? Where have you been?
That's it. I know I've been to a lot of places, but unless I photograph them, and unless on my, I have like tens of thousands of iPhone photos like everyone else. Unless I photograph that thing like many, many times, it doesn't occupy enough space in the the grid of iPhone photos. So I go across it. So I need to.
But so those are buildings you've been to.
Yeah, I don't think I could choose a building I haven't. This is also why I'm saying that
so
this is unfair.
Let me try and find what these two buildings are. So it's not Europe, so that eliminates Gaudi, which I felt maybe would have been your third one, like the Sagrada Familia. If we stay in the terms of like sculpture, kind of weird structure thing, I think that would have been one.
I would. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
But it's not there, so that's not there.
I'll quickly say I would never ever choose that building as one of my favorites.
Okay. The other ones I would have imagined would have been in New York or California, but they're not in the States, so that eliminates that.
Wait, what?
I asked you if they were in the United States. You said no.
One is in the United States and one is not in the United States.
Okay, let's try and guess the one that's not in the United States. That eliminates, I think, the pool of possibilities because you haven't gone many places. So that leaves
not
us.
Necessarily true, but okay, fine.
You went to Canada, but you were too small, and you were not in architecture then. So I would say I eliminate Canada.
I was too small to go to Canada.
No.
Like it didn't fit inside of Canada. What does that mean?
No, but you were too small to know about architecture when you went.
Yeah, I'm not.
You went to
about
Mexico.
Canada.
You went to Mexico, but same thing. You were too young. That's impossible.
Okay, well, I don't need this to be like a bashing of the places I've been to based on my size. Like, just get to the building. Get to the guessing.
Okay.
God.
So I would say we went to China, and I don't know that the buildings you've seen in China would count as your favorite. I would say maybe the bird's nest would have been one of them, but I'm not sure that it really was your thing besides just being an impressive structure. So I would say no to that.
Okay.
I would say the one that's abroad is probably in Japan.
Okay.
And I always mix up the letters of the name of that tower, but the capsule tower that was taken out.
I don't know what his official name.
It's the Nagakin or the something like that. I keep mixing the letters. Somewhat I become dyslexic with this building. That could have been one because I don't think you know the names of the other ones we went to. Did we go in Japan to see any? I'm
looking at the photographs right now, so you can cheat and look at the things. Also, okay. Name your guess. What's your two guesses? Come on, we got to move on with this here.
Did we see any Tada window thing there? No.
Yes.
Oh, we did.
We saw
that little museum
three Tada windows.
So it's probably one of those.
Okay.
That's my guess for the one that's abroad.
Okay.
And the one that is in the U.S., I don't think you would pick Mies. You might pick Frank Lloyd Wright.
Is there a Mies in the United States? Oh yeah, Crown Hall.
A Mies in the United States?
Yeah.
Well, Chicago has a ton of Mies.
I'm blanking right now. Well, what am I saying? There's Farnsworth, but I wouldn't choose that.
No,
and
but
there's Crown
Towers.
Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seagram's.
But I don't think you would pick Mies. I don't think it's your jam as much as mine.
Okay.
Frank Lloyd Wright, you probably would, and maybe like a Falling Water or maybe Taliesin, but I don't even know if Taliesin would be your biggest pick. Probably Falling Water would be a bigger pick than that. So maybe Falling Water.
This has turned into just Marina's brainstorming. Okay.
But you also like Louis Kahn, and I think the only one you really been to might have been the Salk.
Okay, so after 15 minutes of Marina sharing her brain thinking.
Did I guess any of them?
Well, what were your guesses?
Well, either Falling Water and the Salk Institute for the ones in the United States.
You're looking at the list?
No, I'm not. I can see. And one of Tada window in Japan that we might have seen, which I would not recall.
So I don't know. I guess you're part right. I lost track of all the 15 buildings you named. God.
I'm supposed to be the one doing most of the talking in this recording.
That's true.
So I'm trying to do my job here.
Okay, good.
Goodness.
Filling it in with your thought process on how to guess what someone else is thinking.
The other thing I might guess
Okay.
for the Japan one is it might not even be a building. Since you've picked sculptures and monuments, I would not rely on you to pick a building. You might just pick a neighborhood or something weird.
No, it's 3 favorite buildings, and
Yeah,
I think it's a strong argument
right.
to say that the Eiffel Tower is in fact a building.
No, I'm joking. So what is it?
The 2 that were going to share the 3rd place podium, and most of the buildings you listed were on my short list. The 2 that were going to share the spot were Taliesin West and the Bird's Nest building. Completely different. I chose the Bird's Nest because it's like just wacko and different. And,
Oh, really?
You know,
I'm
whatever.
disappointed.
Cool. The Sagrada Familia, it's not my. I appreciate it and all that stuff. It's not my cup of tea. I don't care for it, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell them, David.
I don't
Don't
care
bother
for it.
finishing it. I don't care.
It's like all right. I understand the thinking behind it. I think Gaudi's work is impressive because it's unique and because it is what it is, but it's not my thing. The Tadao Ando projects we saw in Japan, and I don't even know the names of them.
I know. That's
So
why
do you know them?
No, that's why I wouldn't be able to name.
Oh, right. Well, we saw one of his houses, which is the concrete flat front, which we traveled to Osaka to see it. And we got there and we realized that's a private house. Obviously, we knew that, but we didn't think about that. And the front is just literally a concrete wall with one opening for a door. And so we got there and we stared at this rather old concrete facade that's just a concrete wall that's very narrow and not very tall, and we were there for all of 10 seconds, and then we left realizing that was completely pointless because there's nothing to experience because it's a concrete wall. I could just go to any concrete wall and stare at that and have the same experience as seeing that project. We saw an outdoor, I'll put images in the YouTube, an outdoor gallery space that was really, really cool. I really enjoyed that. And we also saw, what was the other project?
Outdoor gallery space?
The one that has like the murals and the water features and stuff. It was just the 2 of
Oh,
us.
yeah. In Kyoto.
Yeah, okay. And then we saw this thing, which I don't remember what it was, which was also...
It was next to a big mall.
Yeah, this was impressive, but not
It was
one
an
of my
art
favorites.
gallery, I think.
I like his work. I think, to be honest, if I were to design something with no, input from clients and whatnot, there would be similarities between his work and what I would... I am saying I'm not trying to compare what I do to Tadao Ando. I'm not doing that, but there were similarities in same veins and similar appreciation for certain types of architecture. I think, but no, I wouldn't choose any of those 3. And to be honest, even if I saw some of his more, his more famous work and iconic and larger and complex work, I don't think I would choose that as my favorite either. This is going to sound maybe really crazy. I think I probably wouldn't choose it because it's something that I would seek to try and do, and something I think that I could get close to doing. Again, I'm not trying to say that I could do what he does.
No, not at all.
But you know what I mean? Like, it's like I think things that are like a bit more like make me question.
Yeah. Or the things you would never do yourself.
Yeah, or like or I wouldn't have dreamt of unless I saw it, right?
Yeah.
Like Ando's work, I would have dreamt of without seeing Ando's work, for whatever reason. But like Corbusier's chapel, I would have not dreamt of the Ronchamp Chapel had I not seen that chapel. And the same thing with the Eiffel Tower. So that's probably it.
Yeah.
And so nothing to do with the quality of the work at all. But anyway, so Taliesin West, we did a whole recording about the trip to the Southwest, which we can put a link to in this recording, I suppose. And I talk about that. We talk about that place plenty. For me, it's, you could name a bunch of Frank Lloyd Wright's projects and I would probably like them almost equally as much. But Taliesin West, I thought, was just intriguing because the architecture itself, and there's an informalness to how it was done. Again, going back to the point I made earlier about Corbusier's chapel, it wasn't an hyper, it didn't feel like the entire place didn't feel like a hyper rationalized thing that was designed and thought out to the nth degree 1,000 times over in a computer CAD drawing where everything aligns to the 1/4 inch to the 16th of an inch and then built exactly that way. It was much more about, I don't know, man, like embracing the place, being out there, and then putting buildings where it felt right because you're there. And it just feels more natural and just more at ease and more, I don't know, primitive and just like, what's the other word? I think primitive is the word, you know, like humankind is building stuff. That's what it feels like. And I appreciate, and the narrative of the place too, and the fact that there wasn't even enclosures, right? Like the windows that are there didn't exist for, I don't know how many, like I think a decade or something strange. It was just open, so the desert dirt and dust would just blow through the inside of the building.
You would have never survived
you know,
that space.
Yeah, it's just well, there's not a lot of flowers out there.
No, but dust allergies. Think about it.
Yeah, but you know, dry dust that doesn't have pollen, I am okay with. More okay with. As I have allergies right now, apparently. And again, like the tectonics, which is the relationship between, you know, elements and how they connect and things like that, was rough. And it was sort of playful, and it made sense. And it's not something that you. Some of the details, I'm thinking about, I have to scroll to the picture, but I think one part of the structure, there was like a low stone wall, and there was like wood beams that came down at an angle, and the beams had some kind of decorative element to it, and they came down and around and attached to the side of the stone in a really kind of like haphazard, sloppy, not good construction detail manner. I mean, but like it worked.
They were experimenting as they were building this place. So again, another experimental buildings.
But even this space, you know, I mean, just look at this space, right? Like, just look at this photograph and this space. Try to dissect and understand all the things that are happening. Try to draw it, the alignment, the misalignment, the materiality, the play of light, the furniture, the rugs which he designed, everything. This is like a highly, highly complex, small, very comfortable, intriguing little space. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's probably also why I don't know if I could ever really choose any structure that is hyper minimal as a favorite building, because I think the raw talent in this case and the skill and the effort that it takes to produce something like this, and also the impact it has, is just, and it's like way beyond a lot of the contemporary modern architecture, which is just, you know, simplistic. It's just simplistic. You know, oh, it's a glowing glass cube in a green landscape because it's channel glass. Super cool. Okay, it's a glowing glass cube though, man. Like, I don't know, right? 10 points, whoever can guess what project I'm thinking about. And I actually like that project a lot, but then you look at this, it's like, but this is like, again, another level.
Yeah, especially when you ask people to build a piece of glass around a vase. And you're like, okay, we're going to have a window, but there's going to be a vase right in the middle of the window.
Yeah. But see, that's the type, that's what I'm saying though. I think so much of the architecture now, like proper architecture and also just buildings that are built, they're based on these preconceptions of what a window is and can and should be. And you look at that's not what people think about when they think of a glass facade and a window.
Do that anymore.
They don't think about a again, listeners have to look at this, but it's an entire glass wall. It's not very big, but it's a glass wall. And then you have two, I can't tell if they're mullions or frames that go down that form like a square. And there's a square within that. And that square, the bottom, the sill, instead of being a sill, is a ledge, like a piece of plywood or something that's painted brown. And there's a little vase that sits on it. And there's some other kind of mullions that come off of that square. Like, it's super weird by most, you know, minimal, modern, contemporary architecture work standard. And I think that's that's probably why I would choose this and a lot of his work as like my favorites, is because it's not something that you would just first think of. You wouldn't default to that, right? It's not a default.
But I think, like when I was saying that the Ronchamp, the Chapelle de Ronchamp felt like it was like crafted with somebody's hands. It's the same thing with, the work of Frank Lloyd Wright. Like, I feel like it is about craftsmanship to making a building and everything that the building needs, right? Like, it was people working with their hands, like stone being carved and little details made out of pieces of wood assembled together, and cutting a glass around the shape of a vase, and those things. And I think, we've lost that. Like, the craftsmanship doesn't exist in architecture anymore. It feels like to me, it's computership.
Yeah. I really do think that there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that it's hard to do this regardless of what era you exist in time.
Of course.
Two, I really do mean it when the computers and all these peripherals, as I was calling them, these devices, there's only so many minutes in a day, right? And if you have to spend X percentage of your time now dedicated toward troubleshooting stuff or working around with these complex tools or learning these tools, it's time away from being able to think freely. And then with the remaining time you have after you go through all the clicking and the menus and this and that, do you feel like emotionally as an architect, as a creative person, okay, let me be really free and think about crazy stuff? Or do you feel like, okay, I only have half of my day now, I need to complete some stuff, right? And so that's one reason. I think the other reason too is that construction technology has advanced so much, and we have much higher standards for creating not just safes, but in buildings that perform environmentally and in their energy use, right? Making them water and air tight, like ultra tight. The level of advancement and the technology of like window systems now is like light years beyond what this is. They're not even the same thing. And to do that now is complex. So there tends to be, for budget reasons and for the time and complexity reasons of construction and designing and detailing and coordination, like defaulting to, let's not do really weird windows that have really weird angle joints and all this stuff, because 99.99% of the projects, even the ones that have architects, don't have the budget for that. And then even we do, how many architects are going to feel like they have the right fee to do that and the headspace to do that, knowing that like this would be so difficult to do now to meet today's standards of water and air proofing. Like, this would be a mess to do. This would be a huge headache.
Yeah, no, I know. It's kind of annoying, and I wonder. Well, the other thing here is that he was the client, which also gives him a lot of freedom in terms of
I need free labor,
schedule, labor. This was a school, so people were learning and building things. But also the time, like, you need time to experiment, make little model, little prototypes, and try things out. And when you're in office and you have projects you have to do, and clients who are waiting to be able to move into their new house and paying for two houses at the same time and waiting to sell and this and that, time is extremely limited,
It is. So. The experimentation aspect to architecture, like you said, is a huge one, and there just needs to be more of it. But experimentation is costly, whether it be time and or money. It's costly, right? And it's just... that's why I've said before, I think it's changing a little bit now, but I think, the last 15, 20 years, probably since the 2000s, as a society, we were just moving more and more toward this concern with efficiency, hyper efficiency, more efficient. And I feel like in the last maybe 5 years or so, now we are starting to pivot to questions about creativity and less questions about being just hyper efficient. I still think the negatives of seeking efficiency as an end goal exists, and it kind of is still pervasive, but maybe a bit less so. But I think inventiveness or experimentation is like the antithesis of efficiency in a lot of ways.
I just realized that I thought it was a fireplace, but there's a bunch of plants coming out of it, so This was not meant to
That's
be.
Not the fireplace. The fireplace is over.
So this is just a
right.
planter. I just realized that.
Can't tell. It's kind of dark.
Oops. So now, can we talk about the bird's nest? Like, I don't really understand why this is part of your list.
Well, that's why it's sharing the podium with the Taliesin. It could be that Taliesin West is occupying like 2/3 of the podium, and the bird's nest has like 1 foot on the podium, and it's about to fall off the podium. I chose it because like partly I wanted to choose something that's a bit more contemporary, just to kind of mix it up. Again, I'm biased toward things that I've seen or things that I've studied, and I studied it in school. And
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I studied in school. Some quick factoids. Oh, my group classmates probably remember the fact, but I think there's like 22,000 tons of steel in the bird's nest.
That's why steel is so expensive. They took it all.
It's all in the bird's nest. We have to deconstruct it so we can get more steel.
That's nuts.
I think it's 22,000. Yeah, we had to do an architectural analysis, but also structural because it's about that. Herzog and de Meuron, I think, as an office, are the most consistent architecture office in producing architecture, like proper architecture. I wish that I had seen more of their work to date. I haven't, but I saw that one, and after studying it in school and then seeing it also, there's a lead up to it because you've studied it. Chose it because it's a ridiculous structure. It's massive. You've seen it. It's a massive structure. The stadium holds like 90,000 people. It's a big stadium. And I also think in terms of stadium design, it is pretty fascinating. What I like about it too is that is an example of them actually dissecting what a stadium is and trying to propose something that is different, rather than being most stadiums, which are just you shove a bunch of program all around the perimeter. You put a bunch of billboards and neon signs or LED signs, and it becomes this like amusement, like Frankenstein amusement park, hub, and that this thing that's like sucked toward all of the things you'd find in Disneyland and have been sucked toward the stadium. Now it's this thing, and it's this like fucking gross Frankenstein catastrophe. It's like garbage pile of like consumerism is what most stadiums are. It's like not a bad description of what that's what they are.
Yeah.
And the bird's nest was not that, and I appreciated it for that. And I think the design was interesting. The proposal was interesting. I think they partnered with Ai Weiwei, the artist, too. So I think this sculpture was based on obviously the bird's nest, and the building was based on a bird's nest, and I think it was based on some sculptures she did. Some kind of ties in with Ai Weiwei also, and that's pretty much it. Also, I think as a spectacle, from the outside, it does exactly what it was trying to do. It didn't fall short, right? As a like sometimes you see photographs of buildings, you see them in person, you're like, yeah, there's someone hired a really good photographer, and they chose the exact right angle, which is the case with most buildings that are published and most houses that are published. I think people would be very, very surprised if you went and saw those spaces and houses in our case, the outside and the inside of those houses in real life. You would not feel as strongly about them as you do in those photographs. Those photographs are lies.
Yeah.
Like they're lies. But the bird's nest is exactly what it is. And at night it glows and it looks beautiful. And during the day, it's this a foggy day. And some of the times that I saw it, it's this mysterious, massive gray thing that feels just appropriate. And then also interestingly, the way that the pattern of the nest portion was done is that there were, I think, 12 big trusses that going across. So 24 points around the donut, and then 12, trusses that are hidden because you can't tell because of the way they did the pattern of the, I guess you call it the facade. And it's also to me an example of a pure expression of what it was trying to be. Right? There wasn't a lot of like it doesn't. When you go to the building, you don't feel like they had to maybe sacrifice a bit here and a bit there because of whatever reasons. They kind of did exactly what they sought out. The only thing that did occur in terms of a gap between maybe the conceptual design of the architecture and what it is in the minds of the architect versus its execution that I could tell is that when you get to the top of the bird's nest, the welds between the steel panels become extremely rough. And I think it's because they ran out of time or money or something, because all of the welds and the seams on the first like lower half of the structure are perfect. You know, like, because that's what you want. They're meant to be not panels. They're meant to be like single big steel
strips of
tube things. And they're perfect in the lower levels. When you get to the very top, it's pretty rough. But that's like the only thing, you know? So yeah. And then I would also say in terms of the performance of it as a stadium, despite me liking it and it being different because it's like open, you know, the idea was that it's open. You can kind of circulate through the perimeter of it. That doesn't work for a stadium because you need to have gates for tickets and security control. So they had to build, you know, the typical white kind of crappy temporary gates and turnstiles around the building as an actual security checkpoint, which you could say is a flaw in the design of the building, or it could say, well, maybe not. It's the similar idea to having a parking structure at the gateway of the city, so you have to park your car, then you have to walk through the city, like Louis Kahn proposed for, I think it was Philadelphia or something. Philadelphia or somewhere. Then maybe that is valid. But anyway, so yeah.
Well, that was a surprise there too. I would not have expected that, but okay.
It's just a ridiculous structure.
I mean, I've been there. It's impressive by its scale. But I wouldn't say that would be one of my favorite. It didn't like move me in any way besides like, oh shit.
Yeah. Well, to me, again, it's an example of like a pretty simple diagram, a pretty simple design.
Yeah.
And then just made reality.
Yeah.
But is a whole lot of work to make it this massive thing.
Can you make that sound again?
Absurd. Building, yeah. If only it was that easy to create things. I'll list the other ones that were on my name the other ones that were on my list. I had the Salk Institute, I had the Unité, the Ronchamp Chapel by Corbusier, which I kind of maybe like equally as Ronchamp, in fact. And I also wrote down the Eiffel Tower and then the Pantheon. Again, heavily biased toward France.
The Pantheon, oh, that's also interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, those are buildings I like, but I wouldn't say that.
There's a bunch of other buildings too that I'm probably forgetting that I've seen.
There's a lot of good buildings.
There's another building that I like, which I'll name because it just, I don't know, it makes me giggle, is the Boston City Hall, which is not received, well, was not well received, is maybe not liked by a lot of people. I think it was going to be torn down or has been, which is kind of a bummer. But yeah, just the, you know, brutalist structures.
Brutalist structures, and that's my jam. I like that too.
Yeah. You know, there was also that Paul Rudolph House apartment building.
Oh, it was so stuffy in there though.
Well, there was also like 35 of us in there.
I don't know. I mean, it was interesting. Actually, visiting that house in New York, it felt like I was inside somebody's cardboard model.
Yeah.
You know, white model.
Yep. Yeah.
Which was cool. But it felt a little too like claustrophobic. I don't know. Yeah, there was a lot of us in there.
Yeah.
That's probably why.
Smelled like wine and cheese.
Yeah,
and New Yorkers.
Like, yeah. And sweat, winter sweat.
Yeah, it sounded like winter sweat, winter coats and sweat. Mm-hmm. It definitely did smell like that.
You know, I think it was a Friday too, end of week. Yeah, like everybody needs a bath.
Everyone's a little greasy. All right, so yeah, those are the three. Anything else to say? And then we wrap this thing up.
No, so your threes, if you want to summarize it.
What was my first? Ronchamp, because it's always been there, so I had to talk about that. What was my second one?
The Eiffel Tower.
The Eiffel Tower, and then Taliesin West and the Bird's Nest. I feel like that's a pretty decent mix.
That's a good mix.
I want to choose, you know, buildings in a more diverse set of places, but I mean, there's a lot of really cool architecture in Japan. They wouldn't be in my
have to go back. There's
like,
a whole side of Japan we haven't seen that has amazing things, so we have to go back.
Yeah, I need to get out more. Some really cool structures in the Southwest. I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's an odd thing, the favorite building question, because it's like architects have a hard time. Anyone who is a connoisseur or an expert or, you know, passionate about X thing, they're going to have a tough time choosing their favorite.
Oh yeah.
Like, what's your favorite movie? If you ask the director, they'll be like, you know, get out of here. But I think it becomes not even about quality; it becomes about other things. It is probably more telling about the person than it is about the structure itself.
Yeah, and I think also like maybe if you've traveled a lot, you will have a lot more references, and I think the ones that maybe resonate or like, you know, shocked you the most in a meaningful way would be the ones that are favorites.
Yeah.
You know, I think also it's hard when you've studied buildings in school because you already kind of know them. It's not the first time, you know, meeting them. So sometimes it might be more about a smaller building that's unknown to most people.
Yeah.
That's actually become your favorite. I think we had a few guests who actually had a smaller structure that they run into during a trip somewhere, and that's kind of became a structure that they cherish more than, you know, the big ones that are published.
Yeah, of course, of course.
All right. Wow, that's cool.
All right, give us an outro.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to this show. If you like what we do, please leave us a review on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. We are on most podcast platforms. You can also find us on social media. Facebook and Instagram is the way you can find us, Second Studio Pod. We have the website where all of the episodes are listed, and there is a bit more information on there as well. And if you have any favorite buildings we don't know about, that maybe we haven't heard of, feel free to text us, leave us a voicemail. The hotline is 213-222-6950. And that's it. We have more coming up. It's only the beginning of the year, so please stay tuned, share, pass around the podcast, and see you soon.
Yes. I want to list one more. Okay. It's the Prada store by, I think it was by Ronchamp.
In Marfa?
No, not Marfa. In Japan. Do you remember the building?
The Prada store. The one with the awning?
No.
Was that the Marfa?
No.
Oh,
it's the one with the bubble glass facade.
Who did that? Shoot.
No, Ronchamp House did it. The one I'm describing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's the Prada store. Let me pull it up really quick. This. Yeah. I have nothing to say about it because we had to wrap this up, but this is also one of my favorites. Yeah. I will say in school,
the Hermes store better with the glass bricks.
I like that one too.
I think I like that better than this one, actually.
This building was happened when I was in school, and it was talked a lot about when I was in school. And when I was in school, I was like, yeah, okay. I mean, it's a pretty basic structure thing, but when you see it in person, I'm like, it's pretty dope. So anyway, that one too. Let us know your 3 favorite buildings and talk soon. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.